Most people think the Boeing versus Airbus rivalry is just about who makes the better airplane. Maybe you've heard the classic comparisons, the Boeing 737 versus the Airbus A320, or the Dreamliner versus the A350. Who builds the safer plane? The more comfortable plane? The more fuel-efficient plane? But the truth is, this rivalry is about so much more than machines. It's about politics, it's about jobs, it's about entire nations tying their identity to a company's success. And sometimes, it's about trade wars fought not with missiles or tanks but with passenger jets. This story has everything: World War II legacies, Cold War politics, economic battles between America and Europe, engineering breakthroughs, billion-dollar mistakes, and two tragic crashes that shook the aviation world to its core. So today, we're going to break down the real Boeing versus Airbus rivalry. And by the end, you'll see that it's not just about who builds the better plane. It's about who controls the skies, and what that means for the rest of us. To understand this rivalry, we need to go back in time. Let's rewind to the late 1940s and 1950s. After World War II, the United States came out not only victorious but also technologically ahead. American companies dominated aviation. Boeing, Douglas, Lockheed, these names were global giants. In 1958, Boeing launched the 707, the first commercially successful jetliner. It changed everything. It flew faster, higher, and farther than propeller planes. Suddenly, the world felt smaller. Then, in 1969, Boeing launched the 747, the legendary queen of the skies. The double-aisle jumbo jet could carry more than 400 passengers. It became a symbol of globalization, of luxury, of the jet age itself. Pan Am, Singapore Airlines, British Airways, they all built their identities around this massive machine. Meanwhile, Europe was watching all this with growing anxiety. European aviation companies existed. Britain had Hawker Siddeley, France had Sud Aviation, Germany had Messerschmitt Bölkow-Blohm. But none of them alone could compete with the scale and resources of Boeing or Douglas. Europe was fractured. Each country wanted to build its own planes, but individually they didn't stand a chance. So in 1970, something historic happened. France, Germany, and the UK put aside their rivalries and created a joint company, Airbus. Spain joined later. This was more than business, it was political. Europe was saying, "We will not let the United States dominate forever." Their first project, the Airbus A300, was incredibly ambitious, the world's first twin-engine wide-body aircraft. At the time, the idea seemed insane. Airlines believed only 4 engines could safely handle long flights. Airbus thought differently, and they were right. The A300 worked. It was reliable, efficient, and it convinced airlines that Europe could be a serious competitor. From the very beginning, Airbus wasn't just about building planes. It was about Europe carving out independence, proving that it could stand on its own against American power. And that political DNA has shaped Airbus ever since. Now let's get into the real battles, the iconic head-to-head fights between Boeing and Airbus. First, the single-aisle war, Boeing 737 versus Airbus A320. These are the workhorses of aviation. If you've ever flown Ryanair, Southwest, EasyJet, Delta, Lufthansa, chances are you were on one of these two planes. Together, they make up more than half of all commercial aircraft flying today. The 737 was first built in the 1960s. It became Boeing's best-selling plane, loved by airlines for its efficiency and flexibility. Airbus responded in 1988 with the A320, which introduced something revolutionary, the fly-by-wire control system. Instead of traditional mechanical controls, pilots now controlled the plane through computers. At first, many pilots resisted, but airlines loved it because it reduced pilot training costs and improved safety by preventing dangerous maneuvers. That single design choice, fly-by-wire, set Airbus apart. The A320 family went on to sell tens of thousands of units. Boeing kept upgrading the 737, stretching it into new versions, but the battle never stopped. Even today, the 737 MAX and the A320 Neo are locked in a sales war worth hundreds of billions. Then there's the jumbo war, the Boeing 747 versus the Airbus A380. The 747 made Boeing a legend in the 1970s. It shrank the world, made long-haul travel accessible, and symbolized the glamour of flying. Airbus wanted to top it. In 2005, they introduced the A380, the world's largest passenger plane, with 2 full decks, luxury suites, showers, and room for 850 passengers. It was a technological marvel, but it arrived at the wrong time. By the 2000s, airlines weren't looking for bigger planes. They wanted smaller, more efficient jets that could fly directly between smaller cities without going through major hubs. The A380 was designed for hub-and-spoke travel, London to Singapore, Dubai to Sydney, but passengers wanted point-to-point travel, Portland to Tokyo or Munich to Denver. Boeing understood this shift earlier. Instead of making a bigger plane, they focused on making a smarter one. The result was the 787 Dreamliner, launched in 2011. Made of carbon fiber composites instead of metal, the Dreamliner was lighter, used less fuel, had bigger windows, and could fly longer routes non-stop. Airbus answered with the A350, another efficient composite jet. The Dreamliner and A350 symbolize the modern phase of this rivalry. It's not about size anymore. It's about efficiency, sustainability, and flexibility. And here's the key point. Every time Airbus and Boeing design a plane, they're not just building a machine. They're making a bet on the future of how we travel. Boeing bet on direct flights with smaller planes. Airbus bet on giant hubs with bigger planes. And each decision shapes billions of dollars of airline strategy worldwide. But remember, this isn't just about airplanes. It's about people's livelihoods. Boeing is more than a company. It's an American icon. It employs around 150,000 people directly, and supports over 1 million more through its supply chain. It's the largest U.S. exporter by value. And it's deeply tied to the American military, building fighter jets, helicopters, missiles, and spacecraft. For politicians, Boeing isn't just a company. It's a pillar of national security. Airbus is the same story in Europe. But here's where it gets interesting. Airbus was designed to keep every partner country happy. Its factories are spread across multiple countries. The wings are built in the UK, the fuselage is built in Germany, the cockpit comes from France, the tail is built in Spain. All of these pieces are shipped to assembly lines in Toulouse, France or Hamburg, Germany. Why so complicated? Because this way, every major European country gets jobs, pride, and political buy-in. If you're a German chancellor or a French president, Airbus isn't just about planes. It's about saying, look at the jobs and technology we're bringing home. So, when an airline places an order, it's not just economics, it's politics. A US airline ordering Boeing keeps American workers employed, a European airline ordering Airbus keeps European factories alive. That's why governments lobby airlines behind closed doors. Airplane orders are worth billions. They can swing elections. Airplanes, in short, are political symbols. They're flying ambassadors for entire nations. Naturally, when the stakes are this high, conflict spills over into trade wars. In 2004, the United States accused Airbus of receiving illegal subsidies in the form of launch aid. Government-backed loans with generous repayment terms that helped Airbus develop new planes like the A380. In 2005, the European Union hit back, accusing Boeing of receiving billions in illegal subsidies through Pentagon defense contracts and massive state-level tax breaks, especially from Washington state. The fight dragged on for more than 15 years in the World Trade Organization. Both sides spent fortunes on lawyers, both sides claimed victory. But in the end, the WTO found them both guilty. Airbus and Boeing relied heavily on government support. That makes sense, right? Airplanes cost tens of billions to design and decades to pay off. No private company could do it without state help. But the point is, these weren't just lawsuits. They were part of a larger economic war between the US and Europe. And the battlefield wasn't in the skies, it was in courtrooms in Geneva. This rivalry has also been shaped by crises. The biggest one for Boeing in recent memory, the 737 MAX disaster. In 2018 and 2019, 2 crashes killed 346 people. The cause was traced to a software system called MCAS, which pushed the nose of the plane down to prevent stalls. Poor design, rushed certification, and inadequate training led to tragedy. The entire 737 MAX fleet was grounded worldwide for nearly 2 years. Boeing's reputation collapsed. Airlines canceled orders. Airbus quietly stepped in and took the lead in the single-aisle market. Then came the COVID-19 pandemic. Air travel demand collapsed by 90%. Airlines went bankrupt or begged for bailouts. Orders for planes vanished overnight. Both Boeing and Airbus faced existential crises, but neither could be allowed to fail. They're simply too important. So governments stepped in, providing billions in loans and support. In aviation, when Boeing or Airbus suffers, entire economies suffer, and that's why they will always have a safety net. So what happens next? The next frontier is green aviation. The world is demanding airplanes that emit less carbon. Airbus is experimenting boldly, unveiling its zero hydrogen-powered concept planes, aiming to launch by the 2030s. Hydrogen could cut emissions drastically, but it requires a whole new infrastructure of fuel and airports. Boeing is more conservative. They're betting on sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, which can be used in today's engines without changing much infrastructure. Less risky, but less revolutionary. Meanwhile, China has entered the race. The Comac C919 is China's first serious commercial jetliner, directly competing with the A320 and 737. It's heavily subsidized by Beijing, and while it's years behind in technology, China's domestic market is so big that the C919 could eventually challenge the Boeing-Airbus duopoly. So the rivalry is shifting. It's not just Boeing versus Airbus anymore, it's the West versus new challengers. The question is, can Boeing and Airbus adapt fast enough? Or will they get caught fighting each other while a new player rises to take their place? Airlines and governments are demanding aircraft that emit less carbon, use less fuel, and run on new types of energy. That demands huge investments and long-term commitments from manufacturers. Airbus is betting on hydrogen, Boeing on SAF and incremental change. Both paths have risks and rewards, and both will shape the next decades of travel. The rivalry is moving from metal and rivets to software, sustainability, and supply chains. And as technology evolves, so does the strategic game behind every order. This rivalry stretches from the factory floor to government halls. And as long as humans keep flying, Boeing and Airbus will keep fighting. So when you hear people argue about Boeing versus Airbus, remember this: it's not just about who builds the better airplane. Think about everything behind them: the jobs, the politics, the trade wars, the crises, the futures being bet on with every new design. This rivalry stretches from runways to parliaments, from factories to trade courts, from the cockpits of the past to the sustainable planes of the future. As long as humans keep flying, Boeing and Airbus will keep fighting. Not just for the skies, but for the future of aviation itself. Subscribe for more stories about engineering, aviation, and technology. Let me know in the comments, are you Team Boeing or Team Airbus, and why? Because in the end, this rivalry isn't just about airplanes, it's about what kind of future we want for aviation. Thanks for watching. See you in the next episode.